Ladies and gentlemen, hi, you're welcome to this session of instructional materials. We looked at the new approaches to teaching, we looked at the traditional approaches to teaching, and now we're moving to instructional materials. Still Kawazera Dina Mountains of the Moon University taking you through this session. What is an instructional material? What is a teaching aid? We need to know the difference between the two. There is a teaching aid, there is an instructional material. There's a teaching material, there is a teaching aid. This one we need to make a difference. A teaching aid facilitates the learning, facilitates the teaching and learning. For example, a flip chart, a map, a computer. When you're teaching ICT, it becomes a teaching aid. But a teaching material is a resource that you use to teach but does not facilitate the teaching and learning. So we can look at the differences that the teaching material or the teaching aid facilitates the learning, helps the learning. A teaching material will just help us to teach but will not facilitate the learning. This computer, as I'm teaching this course in Tovo, teaching technique, it's not a learning aid, it's not a teaching aid, it's a teaching material. If an ICT person is teaching you any course unit related to computer, this one becomes a teaching aid. A chalk, a piece of chalk, is a teaching material. A map is a teaching aid. We need to make a difference between the two. We can look at the instructional materials. Instructional materials refer to any resource or resources, tools that educators use to facilitate the teaching and learning in the classroom. Most times or all the time a teacher is teaching, we must have a teaching aid. We must have an instructional material. And the instructional materials are in classes or in different forms. I will not rush through them. I will not go very quickly because this is very important. When we are drawing our scheme of work, remember you have my assignment to draw a scheme of work. The section for content is there, but there is a section for teaching method, the one I've just finished. But then there is also a section for teaching aid, the instructional material. The materials we use to facilitate the teaching and learning. They are in different forms. A chart, for example. A computer, for example. A video, for example. An audio, for example. These are different forms of the teaching or instructional materials. The materials that we use to facilitate. If you can look at this one, we're saying facilitate teaching and learning. Instructional materials refer to any resource or tool that educators use to facilitate teaching and learning. They are in different forms, like we said. We have the visual. We have the visual material. These ones appeal to the eye. You can say, you can look at them, you can see them. Maybe they're not talking, then that means they're only visual. They appeal to the eye. An instructional material that is visual is the one that appeals to the eye. Just look at them. Then there is audio, where you hear only the sound. For example, if you're teaching English, and you want to teach children how to pronounce certain words, you can play a certain audio. Then the students or the pupils will be able to hear the sound. When we only have the sound, that one becomes an audio. From the audio we have the audio visual. This material I'm preparing and presenting to you is both audio visual, because you're able to hear me, you're also able to hear my voice, you're also able to see. So it is an audio visual. There is sound And also there is a video where you are appealing, where something is appealing to your eye. These are the types or the forms of instructional materials. 3, the visual, which appeals to the eye, the audio that appeals to the sound or that appeals to the ear, and then the audio-visual, which appeals to both. If I asked you about the teaching materials or instructional materials, you'd have these 3. From there, we can move to the choice of instructional material. When do I choose a visual teaching aid or learning aid? When do I use an audio visual? When do I use an audio only? So the choice varies, and it has factors that affect your choice. For teachers, we don't make choices just for the sake of the choice. We must be looking at the effective teaching. Remember, if a material that you're going to choose does not facilitate effective teaching, then we can say your choice is wrong. That's why we said the teacher is supposed to be as innovative as possible. For example, if you're teaching about the parts of the body, biology, and then you bring in the sound, it won't augur very well. For that one, if you're teaching a skeleton, you need to bring a visual one so that they're able to see. If you're teaching about the type of leaf or the types of leaves, it's important to bring a real leaf so that they're able to touch and they're able to see. It must be physical. So we're looking at the choice of instructional material. Effective selection and use of instructional material requires consideration of educational goals, learner needs, instructional context, and available resources. Like we said in the teaching methods, when you're choosing a method, these factors affect the method you choose. For example, if you have a goal of achieving effective learning, you must choose the right method of teaching. You must therefore choose the right teaching material, instructional material. The type of learner needs, the type of learner. For example, if I have the blind and I want to introduce a learning aid, would it make sense if I went for a video? No, but I can go for both an audio, visual. So the type of learner will affect your choice of instructional material. The context in which you're teaching this course unit or in the topic you're teaching, it will affect your choice of instructional material. That's when we said teachers are supposed to be as innovative as possible, because when you're teaching an impaired student, a person with issues with seeing, and then you bring in visual, you bring in audio will do, but the visual will not. Then someone with an issue of hearing, and you bring in an audio. So the type of learner or the learner's needs will affect the instructional context you are teaching, will affect then the available resources. This one is very important. Most times we are going to schools looking at teachers, what they are using. They're like, I don't have the learning aid because the school doesn't have money to buy for us flip charts. What do you want to draw on a flip chart? I want to draw a leaf of maize plant. For sure, do you really need the money to get a flip chart or to get a manila to draw a leaf? No. You go to the garden, bring a visual material, a practical material that students can touch and feel and see. We're saying the available resources. Most of us, when we're teaching, would want to use a video. But do we have the facilities? Do we have the recorder? Do we have the finances, the money to buy the teaching instructional material? But for teachers, we should never say we don't have the resources to have a teaching aid. We always improvise. But strictly, the resources will also limit our choice of instructional material. That was it about instructional material. We said they are in three forms. We said there is visual, there is audio, and the audio-visual. There are factors that affect the choice, the type of learners need, the resources, and the context in which you're teaching. That one will affect our choice of instructional material. And we defined an instructional material. We were able to make a difference between an instructional material, a teaching aid, and a learning aid. They are different. We said a computer can be both a teaching aid and a teaching material if I'm teaching computer. But right now I'm teaching techniques. A computer is a teaching material. But this projection is a teaching aid, a learning aid. It's basically to facilitate the teaching and learning. Then we go to the organizational structure. When we are teaching, there are certain documents that we must have, because we don't teach from the blue. We don't teach anything. We are not like the traditional people where I'm a blacksmith, I teach you that. There is no curriculum, there is no content to teach, but for us here we have certain documents that provide the direction of what to teach. Number one, we have a syllabus. Number two, we have a scheme of work. Then we have a lesson plan. These three, in every school they must be there, especially number one, it must be there. The scheme of work must be there. The lesson plan must be there. What is a syllabus? This is a document used in education to outline the content, goals, expectations, and policies of a course. What are we supposed to teach from P1 to P7? The content is in a syllabus. It's arranged. What do I teach from P1? What do I teach in P2? What do I teach in P7? That's the syllabus. It is also a broad outline of the work plan to be done in a course of a year, which each class, each subject must have. This can be either constructed by the school or imposed by some external examination bodies. For us here at the university, the syllabus, if I can call it, we develop it ourselves and take it to National Council for approval. But for you in primary schools, in secondary schools, it's external. It's a national syllabus, everybody. Whether in the Western Uganda or the Northern Uganda, we use one syllabus. For us at the university, a teacher at Mountains of the Moon University has a different kind of course outline, different from the one of other institutions. That is why we would say this is a broad outline of the work planned to be covered. It can either be external or imposed by external examination bodies. Primarily, we have UNEP. For here at the university, there are some courses like nursing, it's UAHEB, or it is UNIMEB, or UBTEB. Those are external, but the majority are doing internal programs. It's usually presented as a list of topics. You've seen it, you have it. It facilitates both the learner and the teacher on what to teach and also what to learn. Ladies and gentlemen, for now I'll stop here on the organization instruction, where we have just looked at three important documents. 1, syllabus; 2, scheme of work; 3, lesson plan. And we have looked at the syllabus, and then we are going to be looking at the qualities of a good syllabus. Thank you very much for listening to me. Kawazira Dina, your presenter.